too late, way too late, born too late to be a punk. Born too late, way too late, born too late for that old show, that old show.
Welcome to the Born Too Late program, the Born Too Late podcast. I'm here. This is Josh Rutledge. I'm here with Jay Castro. We're also here with Ed Stewart and a special guest, Teddy Spaghetty. How's it going, Teddy?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We are doing fantastic. And this is a very special episode of Born Too Late. It's not just going to be an interview with Teddy Spaghetty. We're going to talk Star Wars with Teddy Spaghetty.
Yeah, it's funny because Jay and I message a lot privately, and it's largely about Star Wars.
So we're going to break from our usual non-offensive
it usually starts. Yeah.
And get into some controversial content now, some hot takes. I mean, there's just nothing more divisive than four Gen Xers talking about Star Wars. So be prepared to be shocked and appalled as we.
I think they say shock and awe.
Yeah, shock and awe as we take turns ranking all Star Wars films from worst to best.
I'm going to be getting salty emails that are not related to the music at all. They're my music at all, just about like, how dare you?
So how about we start with Jay? What is your 11th ranked Star Wars film?
So my 11th ranked is, it didn't take me very long to figure it out, is The Last Jedi. And couple reasons for that. I won't go into it too long, but I didn't mind, and it quickly became, I feel like, a huge old dumpster fire. Not only like was the thing with Luke being all, disenchanted and just being a total ass, and then they made Finn like a total bumbling moron, and it's just not an enjoyable movie for me. I thought the only cool part was the end when they were in that cave. They were in that crystal cave on that planet where I don't even remember seeing what. And yeah, when in that battle on that salt planet, that was the kind of the only cool part I thought was in that whole movie. So yeah, number 11 for me, The Last Jedi.
What do you got, Ed?
Number 11 for me is Phantom Menace.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I could just do the Jar Jar Binks and rest it there, but I think there's a lot. I could say period, but there's a lot of it's clunky. Like there's so much like exposition and like politics in it, which is not what you kind of expect. They always did throw politics in there, but this there's a lot of Senate scenes. Like, why is there so many Senate scenes in Star Wars? It's almost like,
like Star Wars C-SPAN.
Exactly. I'm like, why am I watching like a bill pass in Congress? And I'm like, so there's a lot of that. And then, I think a lot of it too, like the pressure of this thing, because it's the first one after the first three. I think it just couldn't. It probably couldn't live up. It had to have been like amazing, and it just wasn't. So, and again, I'll just, since we're probably keeping it short, those are some of my reasons for Phantom Menace.
Well, watching Phantom Menace though, like I'm thinking about like 99 we're all going to the theater where we have the highest of hopes. The
Yeah.
expectations are on a level that it's a pretty big deal. I mean, it was a huge deal. I remember going night of, and it was very exciting. And I loved it. I think everyone loved it. But going back and trying to watch it again, you were like, it's so goofy.
Yeah, and it's like some of the, and it's like, is Jar Jar supposed to be like comedic relief, or it's just,
I remember talking about it with friends, and we're like, are they trying to like lure in younger, newer Star Wars fans, like our generation who brought their kids? Like, well, they may not appreciate this, but there's Jar Jar. Like, you can latch on to this, this goof. Yeah, whatever. Just yes.
So I'm gonna go with Solo in my 11th spot, just based on the fact that I watched this movie, and my response was, "That's 2 hours of my life that I'd like to have back." It's not terrible. There's some very good acting in this film. Donald Glover, absolutely phenomenal.
It's a standout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it just seems like what you would expect if they tried to make a Disney version of Han Solo. And I just didn't buy that this was really Han Solo. This was somebody trying to be Han Solo. And it's just one of those, you make a prequel just to try to explain everything. Oh, here's how we met Chewbacca. Here's how we met Jabba the Hutt. It just seemed like almost a pointless prequel. And it sucks because you're talking about one of the most iconic Star Wars characters, so there's so much potential for like a Han Solo movie to be like totally badass. And it wasn't. And of course, I know they had a lot of problems behind the scenes and changing directors and everything. And it kind of ended up maybe lacking the direction. So I will put Solo in that position. And now we're going to get Teddy's pick for 11.
That's it. I can't believe you're going with Solo as number 11, because I remember watching it going, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. Like, it's not bad, but it wasn't incredible, but it wasn't bad. And you're putting 10 other movies ahead of it. So when Ed was talking about Phantom, I was like, yeah, Phantom. Like, that was, like, in retrospect, I'm like, it's a stinker. Not a stinker. It could have been better. But for my 11, I was going with Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
And what really, really made it rough was I remember when they were talking about the shooting and the production, and they were like, we're not doing big grand sets like we did on the other movies. We're doing all green screen and CGI.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not great. It's not great. It's like watching like all the claymation stuff where they're like, we're doing this thing. It's going to be claymation. It's going to look so good. And watching it back, you're like, it looks terrible. It just looks awful. And watching all the green screen and CGI, I'm like, this is rough. I'm like, it looks so goofy. It's so corny almost that I think I did debate moving Phantom on my list for a minute, but I'm going to go with Attack of the Clones for me.
Okay. See, again, I think one of the coolest parts was that big old battle at the end, with all the clone troopers and all the jet. It's like, it's funny though, because like when they used to talk about the Clone Wars, that's like what I imagined, just something like epic, all these Jedi is just on this grand scale. And that's the only thing that saves that movie for me, which is not a whole lot. But yeah,
I mean, I think for me, watching it, where I'm like, it should look badass. Like when you watch Gladiator, where I know that's CGI and I know there's green screen, but it looks believable. Where I'm watching this, going, I know it's not our world, but it looks
like a cartoon.
It's on the borderline and cartoony.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. I totally
even like when Natalie Portman has her shirt ripped, and we're like, I remember watching it going like, oh, we have exposed midsection, and I'm like, this is so goofy.
And then especially how it got ripped. Remember, it was like that big old tiger thing just slashed her on the back, and all of a sudden it's like, oops, my midriff.
I've been working out for months. It's okay.
I know. George, close up, so my number 10 is Rise of Skywalker. And it's so hard to get through. I felt like it was so long and there was just so much crammed in there that, basically I just felt it was convoluted. I mean, there was some cool parts in there, but it's just too long and it's just too much of a humongous mess. And I think it was totally unfocused. And so, yeah, that's the reason for that. Rise of Skywalker. What do you got, Ed?
Number 10. Number 10 for me is Attack of the Clones. So, and again, not as much for the CGI, but again, it's clunky, like story-wise, but the only thing that probably makes it and I was debating, I was always like, God, Venom and Attack of the Clones. It's like, I probably could have went either way, but there's a little bit cooler stuff, like, seeing how the clones were made, and you make Jango Fett, and there's some like cooler stuff there. But the love story part of it is, oh my
yeah, God.
That's. And some of these I just recently watched again, and I was just like, the dialogue it's just like,
so,
what is this? Like, I don't know. It's so bad. I mean, it's just like, you kind of felt bad a little bit for the actors of going like, oh my God, we gotta say this. Like,
so we had our nieces and nephews over, and we were trying to watch 1, 2, and 3,
mm-hmm.
and there was a point where we were like, I'm sorry, we'll watch something else.
Yeah. It's like, and then even some of the reactions of like, Anakin to her, or just like, I don't know. It brings that. And I mean, I know they have to have it in there because obviously we don't have anything else if that love story is not there, but it's not good. And it really does bring that whole movie.
Well,
really
and
down.
I thought about Attack of the Clones too. You think that they're following up the first movie, which they're trying to fix the errors of the first movie. Like,
right.
Okay, we've heard some Star Wars fans are all vocal about their complaints and problems. We're listening, and it came out, and you're like, I don't. Did they make it better? No, I don't feel like they did.
I mean, maybe the plus is like, they did write out Jar Jar, I think, so they did listen to that complaint, because I think Disney goes somewhere and they're like, yep, okay, check. But there's
we did the research. 60% of Americans hate Jar Jar.
they got that, but it was like,
I'm pretty sure it doesn't stop in America. Pretty sure it's like worldwide.
Oh yeah, it's probably a global phenomenon. Yeah, so I mean, to wrap it up, 10 is Attack of the Clones.
So I'm gonna go with Rise of Skywalker for 10. I just feel like they had no idea how to end that trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they just came up with like the most stupid possible ideas. Oh yeah, let's make Rey Palpatine's granddaughter, and let's have Kylo Ren be redeemed, like, unnaturally.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just what in my opinion started out as a promising trilogy went sideways very quickly. And yeah, I can't even imagine like sitting down and watching that movie again, although at some point I will. But yeah, kind of a big, massive fail and a terrible ending. And what a way to like end the whole Skywalker series on such a downer note. So yeah, boo to that one.
Yeah, downer. I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong, but ultimately, Emperor Palpatine won this whole thing.
Right?
You know, he was basically like last man, not, you know, his descendant was the last person standing after all that happened.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, and all of a sudden she's like, you know, started calling herself Skywalker.
Yeah.
Why?
Like, who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah.
Ray
Yeah.
Skywalker.
Well, I guess you're looking at me for my number 10.
Yeah.
I'm going through my notes and kind of like making like, well, maybe I'm going to switch this one, and I'm like, stand by the list, stand by your list. Number 3 was it Revenge of the Sith. Again, the first 3, the hopes and expectations were so high, and seeing it in the theater was a wonderful experience. But like looking back in retrospect, I just keep going like, these should have been better movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like Revenge of the Sith, the dialogue is clunky, it's goofy. Everything about it is kind of corny. It was corny. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the story, and I enjoyed watching it on screen, but I'm sitting here like fighting with which is my number 10, and it's definitely Revenge of the Sith.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. You know, like a lot of the prequels, when you watch them, it's like you remember them and they're kind of corny, but like it still had some good characters in it. You know, like I liked young Obi-Wan. You know, I liked Count Dooku. I mean, Christopher Lee. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I think all of them we always pull good stuff out of it.
Yeah. But I feel like the newer ones, like the sequels, it's harder to pull those moments. It's hard, you know. It's not a lot to grab hold of.
Well, even like I know you and I have talked about it. Just like you're like, have you read the books and the graphic novels? And I'm like, no. And you're like, well, they're spotty.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
When it transitions to the movie.
Yeah. So my next pick is Solo. It was a fun watch, but there was, some parts where I'm like, I really liked Woody Harrelson's character, number 1. I thought he was pretty cool. And like you guys already talked about Donald Glover, but sometimes I remember that scene where Han Solo spoke to Chewbacca in that Wookiee language to him. And
you're getting an email now about this. Someone's going to write you like, it's called this.
Shri-Wook or whatever. But it was one of the cringiest things I've seen. It's like literally going, and Chewbacca, I'm like, what? How come he didn't do this in any of the other movies? Now we're learning this now? It's like he'd speak English to Chewbacca. Chewbacca would understand and speak, the Wookiee language back to him. There was no need to speak to him in Wookiee. It's like he gets it. But oh man. So yeah, so my number 9 is Solo. But see, again, there was cool parts to it, but yeah, there's a lot of cheese biscuits laid in that one. Teddy's, I think I'm crapping all over Teddy's number 1.
Well, no. I remember when Solo came out and I watched it and I was like, okay, like, it's all right. Like I accept this as a movie. It was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was kind of neutral feelings. So I'm going number 9, like Solo. You guys are bashing. I didn't think it was that bad. Like I enjoyed it still. Yeah. I don't know who the guy who played Solo. Like he was okay. Maybe if they cast someone better.
Yeah, that's what it was for me. Like I just didn't believe that guy could become Han Solo.
Yeah.
And then Donald Glover was such a standout.
Yeah.
I mean, he was exceptional. Like, I mean, I was watching it going, like, I'm like, was he just studying like the 30 minutes of Lando Calrissian parts? I'm like in front of the mirror, just getting the moves down and the mannerisms and the language. I'm like, because he's perfect in every way.
Yeah. Alden Enric. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Was Han Solo, but I don't know. What do you got for us, Ed?
Number 9, Rise of Skywalker. A lot of the reasons have kind of already been said. It is very long. It's very clunky. A lot of the like Kylo Ren's character arc at the end doesn't seem like really earned, or it's like, hey, I'm good, okay now, and then it's like Ren is it somehow, hey, let's we'll kiss at the end, and hey, and then there's like the sequels have a lot of reliance on like older, like the characters that we grew up with. There's a heavy reliance on them. Like, we'll bring Han back for the memory to show that he'll clone. Oh, we'll bring back Lando for some, hey guys, we could, it just seems like there's like, and then like you said, I don't know if they were just, because I don't know how well Last Jedi was received, but it seems like, I don't know if they were trying to maybe just go fix what people didn't like about Last Jedi, or I'm not too sure. But like I said, I agree with like kind of what a lot of what's been said already is it is all over the place. And then bringing back Palpatine, I was like, really? Like,
Well, it's like the way I see it, they had one job to do, and bring all those 4 characters, 4 or 5, the legacy characters, Lando, Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, just put them together. How hard would that have been? Just put them together. There was not one scene that they're all on the screen together. And that just bugs the crap out of me. It's almost like they did it on purpose. It's like, do they not understand that's why anybody went to go see those turd piles? It was for that reason, and they purposefully withheld it from us. And that still spites me. What do you got, Josh?
So on that note, in the number 9 position, I do have The Last Jedi. Because it pisses me off. I can still remember going to see The Force Awakens, and you're waiting for Luke. You get to see Luke for 10 seconds at the end of the movie. Then you wait 2 more years, and then Luke's a dick.
Yeah,
and
he's a bastard.
Grumpy, and he's totally out of character for who Luke would be. And so just for that reason alone, I can derive very little enjoyment out of that film. I do think the ending with Luke is kind of badass. But yeah, not a highly ranked movie for me. And now I'm feeling bad, like maybe Solo should have been a little higher.
Don't let Teddy get inside your head.
In my head, the first 3, like 1, 2, and 3, are the 3 worst. So when you guys are throwing in Rise of Skywalker and Solo, I'm like, but we're overlooking Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, which should have been amazing. I mean, they had decades to write it, work on it, craft it, character development, all of it. And they delivered, it's cool. Like they're good. They're okay, but they're not incredible. 9, if my number 9 on my list is Phantom Menace, which again has flip-flopped. I'm sitting here with a pen making notes, and I'm going like, maybe Phantom Menace was no. So I'm going to stick with Phantom Menace as 9 because it delivered a lot, but it also lacked in a lot. It was great and so goofy, and Jar Jar Binks does water it down. I mean, I think anyone who left that movie, probably everyone who left was like, what the hell? I do remember the conversation being like, oh, this is a merchandising thing. They're trying to do a ton of merchandise with Jar Jar Binks. Like they're going to try to roll out the red carpet, and then I think they had the realization of everybody hates Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah. And it kind of backfired because I remember seeing tons of Phantom Menace, or not Phantom Menace, Jar Jar, like action figures and Jar Jar.
Plus
it's
toys.
Like, oh yeah, total peg warmers. But yeah. I don't know. My number 8 pick is The Force Awakens. And even though like out of the last 3, I feel like Force Awakens somehow still gave me the feeling of the old Star Wars a little bit more than the other 2. But like, I'm looking, I'm picking up some of the beats. While I remember when I was watching it, I'm like, okay, it's A New Hope again. And if I'm reading this correctly, someone's gonna die at the end because it's like Obi-Wan. And I'm like, there goes Han Solo, and I'm like, dude, it's like got the exact same beats as A New Hope. But out of the last 3, I think that one's my favorite one. And then I love the thing where the very ending at Maz Kanata's little casino, wherever it was, when Rey found Luke's lightsaber, and everybody's like, what are you doing with this? And she goes, oh, it's a story for another time. It's like, well, I guess we'll never know then. There's just so much of that. Like, oh, don't worry about it. It's like, okay. but
I am worried about it.
Yeah. But I want to know,
Okay, do I have to wait 3 years to know?
Yeah, I know.
And we never found out.
Yeah.
And
we
no,
wait 3
no.
years and you didn't tell us.
And the thing that still bugs me, and this is what I'm going to get a lot of hate for, is I still am I watched, Rey, and I'm like, that's weird. How does she know how to fly the Falcon already? I'm sitting there, I'm like, boy, she sure knows how to do all this stuff. She sure knows how to fight really well. She sure knows, and she was just stuck on that planet the whole time since she was a little kid, being like a scavenger. I'm like, how I don't know. Just and it wouldn't take a whole lot. I don't need just a few sentences. Like, yeah, she had to fight for her food, so that's how she got to be such a good fighter. Or yeah, she, went off world to scavenge with these other, scavengers, and that's how she knew how to fix stuff really well. That's how she knew how to fly all these ships. That's all it takes, but they explain nothing.
So you're talking about it in episode 4 when they're like, how'd you learn to shoot so well? And he's like, I've been shooting womp rats since I was a kid or something.
Yeah.
Kind of explains the skill.
Exactly.
There's some basic character development.
Right. And that's
a little backstory.
Just a touch of it, to explain some things.
Yeah. All right, Ed, what do you got?
Number 8 is Revenge of the Sith. Again, I mean, I agree with, I agree. The prequels are all real clunky. I mean, this is probably the best of the clunky 3. And I think what probably barely saves this is probably the Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight. So we go, okay, now we finally know how Anakin gets there. But Anakin's like some of the the justification of how he gets there is all over the place. Like, he believes there's really no proof in why he believes anything. Then it's a little, him and like killing the kids in the Jedi Temple. That's a big one. I'm like, it's a little interesting to come back from that one. But again, the dialogue, there's just parts of it that are just, and mostly a lot of it is his. It's just terrible. Like, it's like, do a rewrite or something here to help some of this out. I mean, I think part of it is you knew that they had to end at a certain point. So about the beats. It's like they got to get here and they got to get here and they got to get here because otherwise, New Hope makes no sense. But it is, again, like I think all consistently through a lot of these prequels, it's just the dialogue is pretty terrible. It's really clunky. Some of it just, even the cheesiness of when, you see him finally get in the mask and then it's like, oh, well, how's Padme? No, I mean, it's like terrible. And then it's like, well, you had she was pregnant. Like he doesn't ask about the kid. I don't remember. It's just like, it's like, oh, how's she? Oh no, she died. Well, you already knew because your whole point of wanting to turn to the dark side was to save her in childbirth. Yet it didn't see. I don't unless my memory, I missed it, but I was like, I don't recall like a follow-up question of like, well, did the child survive or any of that? It's just like, okay, yeah, we're good. Just put the mask on me and we're ready to go.
I guess he just figured the baby went down with the ship.
I guess it's like he doesn't, his total belief in whatever like Palpatine tells him, like he doesn't question anything, doesn't ask for a second opinion. Nope. Just whatever you tell me is, I'm just going with it 100%. Yeah, I don't know. So I think a lot of it centers around him, even though like the whole first prequel is pretty much his story.
Yeah.
Or the main story, but it's just, I don't know. Some of it is. Well, funky getting there.
It's funny that you mention a lot about the dialogue, and I was watching this old interview with Carrie Fisher, and I'm pretty sure all of them, I've heard them all say this, that they would go to George Lucas and be like, who talks like this? Like, I'm not saying that this doesn't make any sense. And then he'd be like, okay, well, how would you say it? And they would kind of change it. I wonder if these guys, he'd just be like, shut up, kid, just say it, or.
What have you written before? I've written Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right. Because I believe George Lucas either wrote or co-wrote all the first three, right? The prequels?
Yeah. I think yeah.
So, oof.
But I mean, also in my head, I'm going like, what is it? That was 98 or 99 when it finally came out. I'm going 20 years between movies of writing and rewriting and tweaking and fixing. And I mean, who knows what was left on the floor.
Well, supposedly he had these three already written. Remember he said,
I always hear that story and I'm not even confident it's true.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I think I saw an interview with George Lucas saying that he did that he took he cut it in half and he thought the last three would make the better story and he left the beginning out. But I'm like, but if that's true, then they already be hashed out pretty well.
It's funny too when episode 1 came out. I mean, or probably when I started hearing about episode 1 in like 96, I was like, 1, but that came out in 76. And then I was like, oh my God, like I never even noticed it said episode 4 until I was like 20 years old, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's pre-internet era, so there's no one to argue with about it.
Yeah. What do you got, Josh?
Okay, number 8. It's gonna be Attack of the Clones.
Finally.
Yeah, finally, Attack of the Clones.
I was wondering when that was coming out.
I did not hate this movie. I actually think, at least the beginning of the movie, I find pretty, visually appealing, and I like the dynamic between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Now, obviously, the whole love story is terrible. It's probably the worst love story ever filmed in the history of cinema. That's bad. But kind of cool. And I just feel like this is an important lesson we should all learn. Never give emergency powers to anyone in the Senate. Bad things are going to happen.
Feels contemporary, even though it's in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, very educational experience there. And it kind of justifies all the hate for Jar Jar Binks that he basically ruined the galaxy. He handed the keys to Palpatine.
What do they say? Democracy goes out with applause or something.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
deafening applause. So yeah, there's cool stuff in that movie. I mean, definitely the battle is great. I love seeing the clones. But yeah, not a lot happens overall in Attack of the Clones, which is why it's at 8 and not higher on my list.
Yeah. All right, Teddy, what do you got?
I've been hearing all your discussion and your points, and it's Rise of Skywalker is my number 8, and there was it was when I was like, okay, I think we're getting back on track. Like we're bringing the franchise back around. Like I'm feeling better about this. But the Carrie Fisher scene where she floats through space back into the ship, I was like, I hate this so much.
The Mary Poppins.
Yeah, I'm hating what's happening right now. There was a lot of good stuff where I was like, yeah, again, right, we're getting back on track. Like I'm feeling good about this. Like we're getting good story and good information, and the team is back together, but there was some goofy elements in it still.
Yeah. That Mary Poppins scene was. I'm like, oh, so they can do that now. I don't know. Even though there's some weird stuff, a lot, like even in the prequels when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon did that super fast running at the very beginning. Remember, I'm like, that was kind of goofy, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, then on one hand, they're lucky that they can go like, well, it's okay. It's it's sci-fi. We can do whatever we want. On the other hand, you're like, we do have a theme and a storyline that we're kind of sticking to, and we can't just do whatever we want because it ties the story together now.
Right, because of plot.
I'm trying to figure out how this thing. Let's just say this. You know what? She floats back in. It's fine. She'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, exactly. You're right. It is sci-fi fantasy. And yes, these people have extraordinary powers, but it's got to connect somehow. It's got somehow. You know what I mean?
Well, then, yeah.
It's
you're
like
also trying to tie together all these movies now, but they're still come on, man. Like you have incredible, talented writers, and that's the best you came up with.
Yeah, I know. So, my number 7 is also Attack of the Clones. I think I already said some of the reasons why I liked it. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. You guys aren't wrong. It is corny. It is clunky, but for me, I don't know if I was what it is. I guess, like I said, maybe it's just the characters that I liked so much. I really liked also General Grievous. I thought that he was a cool character, but that's kind of what saves the prequel trilogy for me is I just really liked, I thought there was some good characters. I thought it was a little bit more, I don't know if consistent is the right word, but I just felt like I was able to follow it a little bit more. Like I felt like when I got to Rise of Skywalker, I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, what? I don't know. So yeah, so for me, number 7, Attack of the Clones. All right, Ed.
Number 7 for me is Force Awakens. It's, and I think it's kind of been said, it is Star Wars. I'm sorry. I mean, it's New Hope. I mean, since all these are Star Wars. I mean, it does basically follow the same beat format of which I can see why they did it, because if they probably went, okay, guys, we cannot have another Phantom Menace. So why don't we just go back to kind of, okay, team, we need to go back to what works. We got New Hope or we got Phantom Menace. Let's just do New Hope again. We'll bring in, some of the old characters, which is an issue with probably the the sequels is there is kind of a heavy reliance on, Han and Luke, and but it's like I said, I mean, it's got a lot of good points, but I mean, again, it is just really New Hope. I mean, which they didn't really do a whole lot different. It's kind of like Jay was saying, okay, well, someone's going to die. It's Han. Oh, we have somebody who's new, Rey, but like we've already talked about, that Rey needed a lot more character setup or development to kind of go like, wow, she knows a lot of stuff already. So there's a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, so I said, that's kind of why it's my number 7. But it is, there are parts where it is enjoyable, but again, it has a lot of problems.
Yeah, I thought the beginning was awesome. Like, I thought Kylo Ren was really cool at first. He in that mask and he stops that bolt, and he just holds it there. I'm like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, he might arguably be the best character of the sequels.
At least he's got like a measurable arc.
Yes.
Everybody else is kind of flat lines.
Mm-hmm.
He, at least you can kind of,
right. And he is a good villain.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
He is a very good actor. Yeah.
All right, Lord Rutledge.
Yeah, I also have The Force Awakens at 7. I really do like this movie. I think just Kylo Ren alone makes this movie worth watching. This is like every over dramatic goth kid you ever met, throwing temper tantrums all over the place and unable to control his emotions and angry at his dad and conflicted about his abilities. So that's pretty super entertaining, and to see like a great dramatic actor take on a role like that and do something that's not just like a stock character villain is great. Yeah, I actually kind of like the fact that they said, okay, let's do a complete ripoff of a New Hope. Yeah, we're gonna have a whole new generation of children to sell toys to.
Yeah, they won't notice. They won't notice.
Yeah, the adults won't care. People are gonna go to this movie anyway, and so I kind of like this. Like, you think about New Hope, and here's Luke Skywalker as just this farm boy, and he's entrusted with the most intricate military maneuver in the history of the galaxy. And so kind of a callback to that Rey can figure out how to run the entire Millennium Falcon, and she can defeat Kylo Ren very badly in a duel with no training.
Right.
And so I think the disappointment was that, when she interacts with the lightsaber and you see these visions, I thought, is she connected to Obi-Wan? Is she connected to Luke? And then it's Palpatine? Like, come on. I was like kind of hoping like the Obi-Wan was like getting it on in the cave and had this daughter or something, and that would have been cool. And,
with the Jawa.
Yeah, him, Palpatine. So now I'm still bitching about the Rise of Skywalker, but yeah, I think it's an entertaining film. I think Oscar Isaac is so good. Like,
he's great.
Yeah.
Swashbuckling, like swaggering pilot.
And he pulls it off. You know, that's the thing. He pulls it off, I think. So.
And so, and of course you got Han Solo doing Han Solo things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, pretty cool movie. And I didn't mind the fact that they were kind of going back to the formula. Sometimes it's good to go back to the formula. We all have lots of records in our collection that kind of model that idea. So yeah, thumbs up for me for The Force Awakens. I thought not a bad movie.
So I'm getting into my area of a lot of flip-flopping on. We're getting into the stride of movies where you're really into it. And I'm going to go with Last Jedi for my number 7. And I'm looking at my notes going, oh no, I'm definitely going to get salty emails because I think it's Last Jedi where Carrie Fisher does the Mary Poppins through space. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh no, I mixed it up. but it has that goofy death of General Snoke in it.
Yeah, his tongue's all kind
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, but again, it had some good stuff going on. That's why it still makes number 7. I mean, again, we're starting to hit the
that
stride.
whole fight scene in the beginning was, yeah. No, the whole fight scene in the throne room was killer. But
I think that's when
yeah.
they're realizing, they're starting to fix the mistakes of the first or the 1, 2, and 3, where they're like, they looked cartoony. We have better technology now. We're going to make things look better. They look much cooler. It's not as blown out and cartoony. It has depth and texture, so it looks better. The characters are much better than they were in the earlier ones too.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I remember that too. Now that I think about it too, the bomb scene in the beginning was awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember them talking about Rose Tico and her sister, and I was like, "This is an awesome connection. I love this story. I love this side story." I'm like, "Is there a romance going to happen?" And then everyone else hated it. So,
yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't. I know I've said this already, but I was just so disappointed what they did with Finn and Rose in their little side quest, because that whole side quest, dude, that whole side quest to Canto Bight at that casino was a total waste of time. They did nothing. They did nothing at that casino. In fact, they led the First Order back to them.
that's
It's so. I'm like, that I don't know, because I liked Finn. I liked him in Force Awakens. I thought him and Oscar Isaac. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool bromance that those dudes have. And then they totally bumbled it with him. I'm like,
I think that's the gripe. The more I read is of all the movies where they have these kind of side stories that go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they're trying to like leave an opening for a future thing, and it just either gets left on the cutting room floor or written out. But yeah, there's cool or interesting side quests that amount to nothing.
Yeah, not just nothing, but like death. It's like he botched it. Like those two were responsible for totally botching the whole rebellion's plan. Whatever. But yeah, that's the only thing. That's the only gripe I get about Last Jedi. But it had like all of them. They had its moments for sure. But
well, that's the thing. We're all sitting here going like, "What's our least liked and most liked?" But like, I know we still like all of them.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, so when you're like rank them, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be tougher than I thought.
Yeah. So my next pick is Revenge of the Sith. And it, now that we're kind of going from least liked to ones we actually like, it's like Revenge of the Sith it had its moments in, I get Hayden Christensen wasn't the best actor, but that end part with him and Obi-Wan, dude, it was pretty gut-wrenching. It's like that. It's when they're sitting there and he's like, in that lava, and he's like, "Well, you were my brother." He was like, "Oh my dude, that's so sad."
Well, I mean, Ewan McGregor is so good though too.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, dude. That guy's a phenomenal actor.
And it's not that Hayden Christensen's bad. I think it's just Ewan McGregor's so good.
Could be.
And
but,
the lava looked super goofy.
Yeah. But it had its cool parts in it. So for me, it made it number 6. What do you got, Ed?
Number 6, I have Solo, and I think it's kind of like, I guess, right in the middle, because I kind of agree with a lot of it. Said Donald Glover is probably the best part of this movie. I mean, he is And they probably should have just done a Lando movie. just
Well, that was always the rumor after it came out. They're like, "There's going to be a movie," and I'm like, "I'll watch that." Like,
yeah,
it's
I
a
mean,
no-brainer.
because he's clearly like head and shoulders above like anyone else in it, and it was cool to see like how he gets the Millennium Falcon, how he meets Chewbacca, and it's like you kind of knew those were going to be in there, and I'm like, okay, I get it. I agree with a lot of that's like it's hard to replicate like Harrison Ford's like kind of Han Solo mystique or swagger or whatever you want to call it. There's probably really no way of replicating that. I mean, unless you were to somehow, I don't know how they would have done it. But so again, it's kind of like in the middle. There's a lot. It's enjoyable. It's like, it's like kind of like I could just go either way on this. It does have problems, but I don't think it has the amount of problems that the others I've mentioned before it do.
All right. So I too am going to have a Revenge of the Sith in the number 6 position. I think
Josh, I disagree.
I think Hayden Christensen probably saw himself in Attack of the Clones and was probably petrified. And you can only blame so much on poor dialogue. So I feel like there's a much better performance from Hayden Christensen in this movie. Like, it is kind of believable that he turns to the dark side and is seduced by the dark side. And you just got so many cool like action sequences in this movie. I mean, come on, Yoda fighting.
Oh, the
Palpatine.
fight scene.
Mace Windu and Palpatine. That's a great battle. Obviously, the dramatic Obi-Wan Anakin scene is fantastic. Hey, let's murder all of the Jedis at one time. And let's see how Yoda somehow gets himself out of that.
Oh, yeah. He ducked out the back door.
Yeah.
I remember being in the theater watching that, and there was a family behind me, and a young kid said, like, Yoda's like a little monkey.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes down in that movie. And it's like they do these first 2 movies in the prequels where everything is set up, and then it's all, a lot of action. They have to figure out, well, how do we get from here to episode 4? And so they squeezed a whole lot in there. I can even deal with Darth Vader. No. So yeah, I think that's a pretty exciting movie. Definitely a good way to wrap up the trilogy, or the prequel trilogy.
Yeah. All right. So you're looking for my number 6?
Yeah.
So I'm in agreement with Ed. Solo. Again, I was looking up the name of the guy who played Solo, and I was like, I don't even remember this guy. And I kind of looked up other movies he's done. I'm like, he's not done a lot. Like, he was in Cocaine Bear.
Really?
Yeah. He's not had much of a career. And again, I didn't think he was bad, but yeah, Donald Glover shines so much. He's so exceptional. Woody Harrelson is killer. Emilia Clarke was great. Like, it's such a strong, much stronger cast that kind of outshined the name of the lead of the movie. But there's some goofy stuff, like you were saying earlier, in the pit with he suddenly knows how. I speak to the Wookiee. It's fine. I can say some words. It was super, super goofy, but I still enjoyed it. I'd watch it again tonight. Like, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It looked good. The story's okay. Yeah, we know how we got the Millennium Falcon. We know how we met Chewbacca. Like, there's some ties up some questions there.
Yeah, you know who else I thought was really good in it, and I can't remember his name, but the guy that played Dryden Voss.
Oh yeah,
Paul Bettany.
Yeah. Dude, again, awesome actor, and I thought he did a really good job. I thought he was a cool villain. But yeah, that's another Solo. That's another plus for Solo.
Yeah, again, maybe like all the really strong other people in it just outshined. It's like Alden or something. Yeah, Alden. Maybe they just outshined him, but I still thought it was good.
And he was fine. You know, I think like sometimes I feel like when you're trying to do too much of an impression, everybody automatically says, okay, well, that's not Harrison. You know, it's like I wonder if he would have just been able to be like, well, can I just do this my own way? Can I just play Han Solo my own, you know, my take on Han Solo instead of Harrison Ford's take on, you know what I mean? Like, I know that probably sounds stupid because, I mean, obviously Han Solo, Harrison Ford molded that character, you know, from the very beginning. But I almost feel like, dude, stop trying to be Harrison Ford.
Also, like I was saying earlier, like Lando, I mean, I'm guessing 20 minutes of screen time across all the movies, maybe.
If that, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm being generous. I mean, so Donald Glover had great stuff to work with, but yeah, you know, not that much, you know, to reference where Han Solo is a huge part, a huge player in you know, all the majors.
Yeah, and saying that, I don't feel like Donald Glover was trying to do a Billy D. Williams impression the whole time.
No.
No.
I mean, yeah, he was just doing it his own way, and he was killer.
Yeah, exactly. So my number 5 is Rogue One. I you know, this is starting to get to my really like, and I think Rogue One. The only thing that I know everybody loves the Darth Vader scene at the end, but like sometimes I'm like, it was cool. Don't get me wrong. But to see him do all that and then to believe that he then went and fought Obi-Wan Kenobi where it looked like they were basically fighting underwater. It was so slow. I'm like, dude, if that dude can do all that, why don't you just take Obi-Wan's lightsaber and fling him across the room and squash him into a tiny tennis ball? You know, it's like that. But that's the only thing that if I don't think about that part, I mean, Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera, killer. Just a lot of those characters. I mean, the guy that was Andor, you know, like all the supporting characters I thought were awesome. I can't remember his name, but the blind guy that was like super in tune with the Force. I can't remember those two guys. But I don't know. I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying Forrest Whitaker, and I remember just watching it, like going like, I'm like, Forrest Whitaker is such an incredible actor, and he's so good. But yeah, he's not outshining like Daisy Ridley. Not Daisy Ridley. I'm sorry. I'm spacing on her name.
Ooh.
Felicity Jones.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, she's killer. She's awesome. Mads Mikkelsen, awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, maybe that's the like the Solo problem. Like Felicity Jones is so good, but the guy playing Solo was good, but not great.
Yeah. All right, Ed, what do you got?
Number 5, I have Last Jedi.
Oh.
I don't.
That's
this
interesting.
movie, yeah, it's like, and do I have it highest on my list here?
It's high.
Yeah, it's going nuts up there.
I mean, well, no, I mean, it's like I don't, or maybe I don't understand all the criticism about it. I don't hate it as much as like, I guess maybe others did. I didn't mind. I mean, yeah, Luke is grumpy, but I kind of knew when she hands him that lightsaber and he just looks and throws it away. I was like, okay, this is going to be a whole new take. And it was, because it was somebody who wrote and directed it that wasn't part of like the start. I think number 1 was, or Force Awakens is J.J. Abrams, if I remember correctly. And then this is it Ryan Johnson?
Yeah.
So I think who did like, what didn't he do? Looper and like a lot of other
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
It's a
I
cool,
knew
good movie.
when he chucks that, I'm like, it's going to be a different take on all this. So I was fine with it. Now I agree the plot to the, I forget the name of that place they go to. It looks like something out of a James Bond movie.
Yeah. Canto
That
Bite.
part, that part I was like, I don't know why this is kind of tacked in. But overall, I mean, I didn't mind a lot of the like him disassociating himself from the force because I was like, okay, well, would explain to me why he's on this remote island for a long time. So like I said, I didn't mind a lot of it. It's probably out of the sequels, my favorite, obviously by that's being its highest on the list. But a lot of it I wasn't bothered by. Like there's a lot of cool stuff. The end with the hologram scene is pretty cool. Like I gotta say that's pretty cool. Kylo Ren again is, his acting it's so good in this, and especially that final scene. I think a lot of the stuff is like justified. Like I get why he would, it's his nephew and he sees darkness in his nephew. So a lot of that stuff I could totally believe and I think is justified throughout. Yes, again, there's problems. Like I said, I mean the one that Canto Bite looks like that story. It is kind of it is the side story is a little like, well, okay, I kind of get it. But Benicio del Toro in there was a cool ad.
Oh yeah,
It's the Code Breaker. I thought that was a cool because he's phenomenal. But like I said, I don't dislike it as much. But again, I don't really know what. I didn't follow a lot of the criticism towards that movie. But again, like I said, I think a lot of it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably better that you didn't. You're unspoiled.
It sounds like there was a lot like when it came out or after just must have been.
Oh, there still is.
The Reddits just must have been filled.
Oh, Reddit was ablaze with negativity. Yeah.
All right. Number 5. My top 5. 5th highest ranked Star Wars movie. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I gotta tell you, I like C-SPAN Star Wars. I think it's kind of cool. I'm like the only 6-year-old watching episode 4, wondering about what's going on behind the scenes in the Senate, and so I get to see all of this backstory in episode 1. And come on, Liam fucking Neeson, like how badass is Qui-Gon? Now that's a cool character.
Awesome.
I feel
he was pretty awesome.
Yeah, we got gypped out of more. Not
or
getting
Darth
more
Maul.
Qui-Gon in the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And more Darth Maul.
Oh, yeah, Darth Maul is so great. Like, what a
So
cool villain that is, and how incredible like the fight scenes are with Darth Maul, and when you compare that.
I remember losing our minds when the second lightsaber came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do that stuff that, you do episode 4 and you have Alec Guinness and you can't really do a whole lot of choreography with the fight. So it's going to look like two old men leaning on each other. And then you have fantastic, like martial arts, amazing fight scenes in Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Ray Park. Was
I remember seeing this movie. I was 28. So I was this, cynical punk rocker and hated it, whereas I watched it more times over the years at different stages of my life when I was maybe more in touch with my inner child and could appreciate it more. And I have to say, maybe after third or fourth time, I started thinking, you know what? Jar Jar Binks is kind of funny.
Oh.
Yeah, I find him entertaining, especially I think it's the dynamic between him and Qui-Gon, who just cannot tolerate him and is so annoyed by him. And like Qui-Gon is like a stand-in for every person over the age of 6 who's watching. And so you get to experience how anyone could find him annoying. And somehow at this point in my life, I kind of find that amusing. It's kind of like now how at my age, I would rather listen to the Queers and Screeching Weasel. I just relate more to, Ursa finally has tits compared to anything that Ben Weasel was trying to say in social statements. I think I like things that are dumb more than I did back then. So yeah, a lot of setup, a lot of development of the political machinations going on,
Yeah.
but such an amazing performance.
The Jar Jar
Palpatine.
Binks performance.
Yeah, but for Palpatine to basically be two different characters, and for him to be like this, seemingly, kindly senator who's secretly an ultimate evil. Yeah.
Well, I think also it answered a lot of questions that we'd had, like all of us had, like, oh, well, this explains Emperor Palpatine, like where he came from, and now we know, like, okay, this makes some more sense at least.
And the pod race, I remember watching it in the theater and saying, when is this scene going to end? But now it's like that pod race is pretty fantastic.
Oh yeah, I like the pod race.
I think it spawned a pretty good video game at the time too. The pod
Yeah.
racing.
Yeah, I remember.
So my number 5 is where it gets tougher. Is Force Awakens. Like when Force Awakens finally came out and I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, this is what I think Phantom Menace was supposed to be. Like, have a more mature, not as juvenile, not as goofy version of Star Wars. I mean, it had its share of issues. I mean, Rey also just knows how to speak Wookiee out of nowhere. Like, oh, she can speak it too. Well, everyone can speak it, obviously. Maz Kanata was good, but the animations are still a little goofy.
Yeah.
Like, they're way better than any of the earlier stuff, like 1,000 times better. But the animations, I was like it still looks animated. It still looks computer generated, but it is also a nod to A New Hope, which, I mean, everyone loves A New Hope. I mean, I think that's why we're all here. And I thought it was cast well. Like, yeah, like the characters were good. Is that where we first saw Andor?
No, that was Rogue One.
That was Rogue One. Oh, that was Rogue One. Well, I'll discuss that when we get into Rogue One then.
Well, you know what's funny, dude, is that there's something about that Force Awakens trailer that is so good. Like,
the trailer was killer. It was awesome.
I'll still go back and watch it on YouTube because the trailer was almost better than the movie itself.
Have you seen? It's on YouTube. It's Daisy Ridley watching the trailer on TV for the first time.
Really? Oh, wow. No,
And
I've never seen that.
She just loses her mind. I mean, who wouldn't lose their mind? But also, like, she's the main character of the movie, and she looks awesome.
Yeah, it's a killer trailer. I remember that thing got me like excited, to the, my head almost popped off. And I still do. I still get just excited watching that stinging trailer.
Well, I think also, like, in the back of your head, you're going, okay, like, we're dealing with 1, 2, and 3. We're dealing with kind of like the errors of these earlier movies. Like, are we going to touch on this? Okay, no, they totally they fixed it. They kind of fixed a lot of, or the concerns. They wrote it for still like the Gen X crowd still.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So my next pick is Phantom Menace, number 4. And for all the reasons.
I'm sorry. Did you say Phantom Menace?
Uh-huh.
Just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
My reasons is exactly what Josh said. It was, if you see Palpatine's manipulations throughout the whole thing, and how he's like positioning himself in place of power, and again, characters. And one of the things I really liked is it gave us such a new environment in Star Wars. Naboo with that palace, I just thought was awesome looking. And even like the Gungan underwater scene, it's like it's so killer. It's like so majestic, and it's something we've never yeah, it was, you know, plus like how we already talked about all the characters, you know, Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson, Ray Park, and his silky smooth Darth Maul voice. But I don't think that's his voice. I think that's somebody else's voice when he talks. But you know, and of course it's got the down parts, like sometimes Jake Lloyd was a little but you know, you take the good with the bad. But yeah, I love Phantom Menace. You know, that's when I still watch. Like I'll still put on, like we were talking about before we started recording, like, you know, stuff I'll put on like while I'm folding laundry or doing something. It's like I'll put on Phantom Menace. I dig it.
No, it's funny listening.
Sorry.
We're also vastly not in agreement, not vastly, but we're all all over the place. 4 different people, different rankings.
That's good. I was hoping our rankings would all be the same, you know.
Well, I'm sitting here like listening to you going like, no. But I'm like, it's fine. I'm like, it'll be okay.
Ed, what do you got?
Number 4, I have Rogue One.
Mm.
And I just thought it was like a cool premise. You know, it was like, okay, let's take the squad that actually, because it's like briefly mentioned in New Hope, like, oh, you know, this crew, they got the plans for us, and you know, it didn't end well, and it's just kind of like they could have went. You know, it was like it's so little in New Hope, but it's like they fully fleshed out this premise. Like, and we've already talked about like the acting in this is really phenomenal. It's not reliant, like the sequels are, you know, and I've already said about rehashing, it's like they're reliant on previous seen character, but I don't, you know, really recall like really much reliance. Yeah, there's a Darth Vader thing at the end, but this movie is relying on just the characters that really have never met, and it totally works. I mean, and it's like I said, the acting is good. I thought the story was really good. I almost had a little bit, I was like, is this better than like, but it couldn't crack into my top 3, but I don't know. Like, I remember watching it and I was like, this is pretty good for like something like this. Was it I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was like the first of like the side stories building out like the world, or was there another one I missed?
No, I think it's the first, right, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like it starts off pretty good as like I'm like, well, so they do have a lot of potential taking something little. Now that's a whole other show. I mean, probably talking about some of the others, but again, I mean, like I said, it does stand alone on its own for me.
Yeah, the Princess Leia part at the end was also kind of weird.
I mean,
it was.
I wish
weird,
she
but
wouldn't have turned around her.
Yeah, they kind of had to have that scene in there though.
Yeah, no, it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but when she turns around, the face doesn't look quite right, and I'm like, you didn't have to show the face. You know, we could have just done with the silhouette. Everyone watching that stinking movie knows what that is.
Yeah, they could have done like a Charlie's Angels and just on an intercom or something.
Well, I like that they showed her. I like that that they had that connection. But
and it looked good too. It wasn't like something's a little off. Like it looked very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. What do you got, Josh?
So top 4 now. We're getting into like the Mount Rushmore of Star Wars movies. So
yeah,
I've got Return of the Jedi. I kind of look at this from like the C-SPAN Star Wars fan lens. I love the whole, you know, commentary on Vietnam that we have with the Ewoks. And so, anyone who hates the Ewoks, oh God, that Ewoks, they're doing this to sell toys and everything. But yeah, there was definitely, political commentary on there, and how the Ewoks, ends up, defending themselves against the evil empire. So yeah, it's I mean, all these movies at this point are super cool. And just the whole, Luke, all of a sudden, he's a badass now, and he shows up, and that pretty exciting, Han Solo rescue scene is great. And obviously the extra reveals, and the final confrontation, and the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. Don't love it as much as the very first two movies, but still, pretty great considering how hard it is when you have this incredible movie and then you have another incredible sequel, and how do you keep topping it? So, yeah, I do enjoy Return of the Jedi.
I don't know what they call the third movie, but they always call the second the sophomore slump, and I'm like, what? There was no sophomore slump, and the same for the third movie. It just kept getting great, staying great, and getting better.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's even like the budget probably like quadrupled, but they didn't like water it down with just unnecessary things.
Yeah, totally. I think like thing and the skiff and the Sarlacc pit, and
Yeah.
the whole part was just awesome, man. I could watch that over and over.
Even just watching like the making of scenes, and I'm like, I love this. Like, I just love watching the making, like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So my number 4 was me and Ed are constantly very close, and it's Rogue One, hands down. Rogue One. I thought it was a movie that stood on its own. I thought the cast was killer. The story was incredible. Was it Felicity Jones? It was great.
Yep.
I mean, everyone in it was cool. It had comedy elements, but it wasn't corny or goofy, and it tied together parts. All these pieces of the story. I remember when I was younger, going like, "Who are the Bothans? Like, who are these random people?" And I'm like, "Oh, I know who they are now. I know how they got the plans." It looked so good. I mean, the more we talk about it, I'm like, maybe I'll just throw it on maybe later on and wrap it up again. And watch it another time. It'll be easy. Like you said, I can fold laundry and have it on, and I'll be just as happy.
Yeah. So, you guys, newer ones are really hit or miss, but one of my favorite books that came out within the Disney acquisition is a book called Rebel Rising, and it's about how the years where Jen Erso spent with Saw Gerrera, growing up with him, and the all the adventures they had, and that book is killer. Which is how I listen to it. And dude, if you guys are up for it, I highly recommend that. It's really cool.
And I was just remembering too, when Andor came out, like there was a point where my wife says, like, she's like, "Who's Andor?" And I'm like, "He's in Rogue One." And she was like, "I don't remember him." So we watched Rogue One again. I'm like, he had the smallest role in Rogue One, and he got this incredible spinoff. Like, I forgot it was that small of a part.
But almost better that way, Well,
I think back in the day, everyone just hoped they get an action figure. You never expected to get a spin-off show.
I find it tied too much into it. It starts falling apart. You know what I mean? Like when you try to, like if you try to do this like Solo, now all of a sudden you by expanding his story, it raises more questions than anything else, or sometimes you find contradictions. You're like, well, that's weird. That's not what he said in New Hope. He said this and that, but yet you're doing it.
So it answers questions and raises new ones.
Yeah. As opposed to if you take like a character like Andor, who doesn't have a whole lot going on, then there's less of that.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, was he in the graphic novels and the books, or
Not in this one. I'm sure he is in some of the other ones, but this one was just Jen and Saw Gerrera and his band of like extremists.
yes?
But so my number 3 is Return of the Jedi, for all the reasons I already said. I don't think, I mean, I don't think that there's, like Teddy was saying, there's just there's no let up in the first 3. I remember, I don't know, maybe it's a nostalgia thing. I don't know, but, I remember Return of the Jedi. I remember going to see it, and the weird thing is that, I never tire of these 3 movies. I always, I don't know. I can't even count how many times I've seen Return of the Jedi. It's a lot. But yeah, great stuff. What do you got for us, Ed?
Number 3, that's the same. Return of the Jedi. I mean, it's tough to beat the original 3. And this is probably out of all the sets of, we have 3 sets of 3, if I'm doing my math right.
Yeah.
The one that's actually like the best conclusion of a series. Like
That's
the other
interesting.
one we've actually talked about where it's just like, okay, we didn't really conclude this, or they threw this in. This one actually wraps up. I mean, yes, you could argue, like I think Josh was saying, the Ewoks arguably it could be a merchandise ploy, and I mean we could really like nitpick it apart. But I think overall, it's just as enjoyable as the 2 that come before it. And like I said, there's not really any drop off. It's just, however you view the other 2. But again, I think as a out of an ending, or was this the conclusion of that original group of 3? I think it's the best of the conclusion movies.
Yeah, I think it's really hard when you have like a super successful movie to ever have a satisfying sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to have gone to having like 3 really great movies is very impressive.
Oh yeah, massively popular, all
Yeah.
great movies. Like, it's not very common.
Especially considering they had some sort of changes going on behind the scenes with that 3rd movie, and still pulled it off in a pretty fantastic way. So my number 3 is Rogue One. And I think a lot of this just comes from the fact that when this movie came out, we had some disappointing Star Wars movies come out for quite a few times, and this felt like a return to like this was a real Star Wars movie.
Mhm.
And it's weird that something that would really have nothing to do with George Lucas would be such a good caretaker of like the Star Wars legacy, and it just felt like it had the same spirit as the original 3, and just tremendous chemistry with Diego Luna and Felicity Jones, and it was believable that their characters, of course, who would maybe a little bit at odds at first, but they would end up bonding the way they did, and would in each in their own way have a reason why they wanted this mission to be successful. And yeah, I think being a child in the 70s and watching these movies and wishing I could know more about the Rebel Alliance, and here you actually get to see like the inner workings of the Rebel Alliance and what it takes, and to have like these really great characters who are all a big part of what it took. Yeah, it is cool at the end, the way it kind of you see Vader, and you kind of see how the ending of this movie goes right into the beginning of A New Hope. But
That was awesome. That scene was awesome.
Yeah, love that, and that it just felt like everybody that had a part in writing and directing that movie really understood Star Wars and really made a great Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it's funny that like what you said earlier, where you're like it came out and you felt like everything was going to be okay. Like, yeah, I remember seeing it going like, okay, we're back to what we all want. Like this movie stands alone on its own, but it also rides with all the other, rides with the the original movies.
Yeah, totally.
So getting into my top three, which is no surprise, is also going to be Return of the Jedi. I mean, for all the same reasons, if it's tough to pick, your top three from the original three, but I'm guessing it was kind of, easy. I don't want to give away my number one and number two because I keep changing them, but number three just hit that stride too, where it was so good. Seeing it in the theater as a kid was good. Watching it on VHS as a teenager was incredible, and watching it now on Disney Plus is still incredible. You get excited. Story's great, characters are great, it all looks so good. It's just such a good movie. Like, yeah, I mean, it was tough to pick number three, but yeah, it stands at number three.
Dude, I still get tense at the Rancor scene. Like,
I feel bad when the Rancor monster dies.
Yeah,
the handler's all sad, and I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, Luke's gonna get eaten. Like,
Oh, he dropped the gate on his head. Like, oh, the poor Rancor monster. He had no chance.
Yeah, dude, that was brutal.
Yeah.
My number two is Empire Strikes Back.
Would you like care to expand?
And I guess actually I screwed it up. No, it wasn't. It was A New Hope. New Hope is my number two. Okay. So, I just spoilers. I didn't remember seeing A New Hope in theaters. It was, I saw it afterwards. I remember seeing Empire Strikes Back, and I remember going back a few times and seeing Empire Strikes Back. But so New Hope, and is my number two, maybe only because of that connection, was because Empire Strikes Back was my introduction into Star Wars, and it's like the first movie I really, really was able to connect with and remember enjoying. And then I remember, like Teddy was saying, renting the VHS and then saying, "Oh, that's a Star Wars." But that's the only reason why New Hope is my number two. It's still, I mean, it's every bit as magical as Empire. I think that's the only reason why it's my number two, is just, for the reasons I already said. It's not less enjoyable. People, always say, "Oh, it's slow and it's some of the effects are clunky." But dude, I feel like sometimes with a movie this good, it's like when it's this quality, I overlook a lot of that stuff. Like I overlook sometimes, well, I was going to go to the touch station and pick up the power converters or whatever, some of the wonky dialogue. But I mean, whatever, man, it was the 70s. So yeah, New Hope is my number two.
Even when I watch some of the scenes they cut out, I'm like, it could have stayed in. It would have been fine.
Oh, right. I know. Exactly. Ed, what do you got?
I have the same. Number two is New Hope. And yeah, you could have gone one or two on either one, but New Hope, I'm trying to remember if that was the first. It might have been the first one I saw. I don't know that I saw it in the theater. I can't really remember when I would have seen it, but it does almost like everything right. Like a lot of the previous movies you were talking about, like, well, there's no character development, or we don't understand why anybody does this, but you believe why everybody would kind of do, all the main people would do everything in this, because everything is set up. It's like you know, you get to meet Han. Okay, he's a bounty hunter. So you see it's like there's nothing that's not believable. The acting's great. The writing is on point. Yeah, it's I mean, what is it, 77? Right?
77, yeah.
77. So it's like, I mean, I guess dating ourselves here, you know, CGI wasn't a thing. I could see if like a kid rewatching this might be like, what is this? But I mean, for us growing up with no CGI, I mean, those were pretty incredible like scenes. I don't, you know, I know really, because I think, you know, there's going to be a lot said about this, but it was a cool introduction to this like new world nobody had ever seen. And like I said, it's like Vader's good. Obi-Wan is a cool character that you meet, you know, and even like Luke, you know, he's a little, I mean, this is really super nitpicky. I mean, he might be a little whiny at the beginning, you know, like, I'm gonna go do it, you know, but it's like, those are minor. Like, and I mean, like super just going through and like nitpicking this thing. But I mean, overall, this thing it's so good. Yeah, you could put it on now and it's still just is exciting and, you know, amazing as what it always was. Like you said, you know, time 1 or time 31. I mean, it still holds up. It's just a phenomenal film.
I mean, even when that scroll starts, you have your, you know, TV cranked, like you still kind of get like chills and the excitement you got like the first time around.
Oh, dude, when the 20th Century Fox symbol comes out, I get the butterflies. But you know, it's funny, like what you were saying about the effects. Have you guys ever seen how they filmed that POV shot of the trench run at the very end?
That's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's really had some dude on the back of a pickup truck holding a camera, and then they just drove him past it. And he was like filming, like, so. There's this documentary that I highly recommend that's on Amazon called Icons Unearthed.
Okay.
It's Star Wars, and it's got a lot of interviews by people that you don't normally see being interviewed in most of the documentaries. And it's really good. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but I thought it was really great. And it's in a few different parts at different episodes, because they have like Icons Unearthed. They have like a Star Wars one. They have like a Simpsons one.
Oh, Fast and Furious.
Yeah. But the Star Wars one is really good, and it goes really in depth. That, you know, like I said, with a lot of people that a lot of times most documentaries don't feature. But yeah,
and that's kind of, I'm Googling now. It's kind of recent. It just wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah, it came out a couple of years ago.
Oh, no, pretty recently. Like that's something to just throw on and nerd out.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Josh.
All right, number 2, Empire Strikes Back, the sequel by which all sequels are measured.
Definitely.
I love you have the New Hope, which was this epic, you know, sort of space western, and then you go to the Empire Strikes Back, and it's just super dark, and just I mean, obviously the most shocking plot twist in the history of films, and obviously the whole thing with Yoda and Lando Calrissian, amazing stuff. So yeah, it's just a tremendous film, and I love that you can kind of end it, you know, in this sort of a very, 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 very dark place, but still lots of tremendous action and iconic characters. Yeah, just a fantastic sequel, and I can see why a lot of people would say it's their favorite Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sitting here flip-flopping, and I have multiple crosses out on my paper, and I'm like, is it Empire or New Hope? And I'm Empire, and it doesn't matter. They're both incredible, but I think Empire is number 2 solely because I remember the cliffhanger drove me insane as a kid. Like it was left. I was like, it was just like, wait, what? Like what? Like and what? And like, you're a kid, so you're like, gosh darn it. Like and not realizing like I have to wait now 3 years to get some closure on this. But no, you're right. I mean, they're on Hoth, which was super cool. They cut the tauntaun. I mean, the tauntaun scene haunted me for years. Cutting the tauntaun open, dropping the AT-ATs was badass. Like the whole thing. Yeah, it was so cool. There's so many cool parts in that. And then you get the. Is that when Luke gets his hand cut off?
Yeah.
Gets his hand cut off, finds out who his father is. Killer, just super killer. So it's a tough one. I've been multiple crosses out on my paper, but Empire is an easy number 2, or if not 1.5.
Yeah. My number 1 is
well, obviously, because that's all that's left.
all the reasons you guys said, and I still, I remember, talk about environments. Like I remember like Cloud City was like, I was like, what the crap, and the Boba Fett in that scene, in the dinner room when Lando double crosses him. And I still think this is one of the coolest scenes when they go into dinner and then they open the door and Darth Vader's standing there and Han pulls out his blaster and starts shooting him, and Vader reaches out and takes his, like, dang, that's so awesome, man. It still gives me chills, that part.
Yeah, I still will never understand the Cloud City space, like it was the side-by-side spaceship. Like, what purpose did it serve?
Yeah, I don't know. They're like little cop cars or something. I don't know.
Something.
But yeah, there's a lot of great parts in Empire. Again, the Hoth scenes.
Yeah, all of Hoth was badass. I kept taking styrofoam from packaging to try to rebuild Hoth, which doesn't really work very well with packing styrofoam.
Yeah, the AT-ATs, all of it, man, it's killer.
And the tauntaun scene, you weren't haunted by the tauntaun scene?
Oh yeah, no, I was.
Like,
I very much was.
The guts pour out, but then I go like, and they're stuffing him inside. Like, what is happening?
And then I look at like oranges. I'm like, this kind of looks like the inside of a tauntaun. All right, Ed. So your number 1 is?
Oh, it's Empire.
Empire.
I don't know what else to add. It does. I'm trying to think of like sequels that possibly top the original. The only one that comes to mind is arguably Godfather 2.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, most usually fall short in some way, or if it's a trilogy, there's some like middle movie curse because we don't ever wrap anything up, and it's just kind of a long slog till they get to an ending. But this movie never feels like that at all. I mean, it's like, well, it's probably a big claim to say it could stand on its own because it needs New Hope, but it's like there's the storytelling is so good. Like you're talking about the deception scene in Cloud City. It's like you almost don't even see that coming. Yeah, I mean, now, yes, on like time 45 or whatever you're watching, okay, we know what's going to happen. But I mean, like the first time through, I was like, what? Like, wait, Darth Vader's sitting in it? Like, it's not even like, it's like so well set up, and there's so much stuff like the I know it's iconic now, the Luke, I'm your father. Like, when you first see that, it's like, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, wait, what? Like, really? Like, and then, even like some of the stuff after the hand is cut off, like him sliding down all those chutes, and you're wondering like, where is he to go? And then him just like hanging there, and you're like, wait a minute, is anyone going to pick him up?
Oh,
and
that still gives me nightmares.
He's just hanging by his arm because he's only got the one hand left before he gets it seen. And I think it was one of the first movies I remember where it did kind of end on like it does end on a down note.
Oh yeah.
It's like as a kid, probably most of the movies you're seeing, it's like, okay, it's going to be a little sad. And then it's like, it ends happen. You're like, oh no, this one, no, it doesn't at all. I mean, it's like, you're like on the, and it doesn't like I could have went back 1 and 2, but it somehow takes everything that was like really, really well done in New Hope, but they like stepped it up, which is again pretty amazing for like a sequel to like make it better. And they took these really cool characters and like gave them even more depth and more character development and more like, and put them in like, you know, even the stuff of like freezing Han, you know, Boba Fett taking, it's like some of the stuff at the time I was like, kind of, I mean, now it seems like trivial. Like even the like, oh, I'm your father thing has probably been played out I don't know how many times, but back then it seemed, at least to a little me, seemed like real fresh. But yeah, you know, I mean, like
I'm thinking too, like when you're talking about character depth, but there's also so much character growth.
Yeah,
like they weren't stagnant, they weren't flat.
Right.
Like, you know, they matured.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about Luke from A New Hope being like a whiny, like young guy, and we're like, now he's this like, you know, battle hardened badass.
Yeah, and like a lot of the Luke and Yoda scenes are so good when he goes to Dagobah. I mean, it's just like, and that could have been just like, okay, here we go. But I don't, and it's like there's no, it doesn't seem like anything of that movie is like wasted. Like we talked about like earlier films, oh, there's these wasted side stories, and there's a character on a pointless journey. Like nothing about this seems pointless. Like everything has a major point, and like you said, there's so much growth for all the main characters. I don't know. I mean, I probably should stop so we can get to everybody else's one. But you know, I mean, it's probably, I don't know. It's just so phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I like about, you know, watching these movies again now that after I've seen the prequels is you can really understand like all of Yoda's reservations that he has about training Luke and the things he's worried about happening. It just makes such perfect sense. Yeah, my number one obviously is New Hope. And I think it's because clearly when they were making that movie, they had no idea that it was going to be successful. I think they were just happy to get it made. They wanted to do this, you know, this kind of movie, this homage to like, you know, movies that George Lucas had loved growing up, and this great, you know, super entertaining, you know, space and cowboy stuff. And so there was no like ulterior motives in terms of commercialism or marketing toys or anything. And I just, you know, I was 6 years old. My dad took me to see this movie, and I just remember sitting there thinking, like, this is the greatest night of my entire life. You know, just seeing this, all of this, these worlds, and these creatures and these amazing things on screen. And it's just so much about this movie is iconic. I mean, just think about the first Han Solo scene and how immediately you know who this character is, and it's just an incredible like acting performance. It's just so underrated in acting, like what Harrison Ford did in that film, and of course, obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi, also, you know, iconic. And you can even forgive like how horrible the lightsaber duel is, knowing the technology they had and the limitations they would have had. But yeah, just such a classic story, and obviously the whole incredible scene of blowing up the Death Star. I feel like there could only be like one first Ramones album, and so you can say the Ramones had great albums after their first album, but there's just something special about that first album. And that's kind of how it is with Star Wars. Like New Hope, there was never going to be anything as pure as that. There was always going to be like thoughts of commercialism and how do you meet expectations and what are you going to do? And you've got people now pressuring you to do things to make more money. And so, yeah, it's just a pure piece of fantasy and sci-fi. That's that movie changed popular culture. So yeah, it's probably my favorite movie of all time, period.
Wow,
dang. He had no problem getting his number one.
Yeah.
Also, you know, going with Josh, yeah, it's A New Hope, and it's partly because seeing it for the first time is so mind-blowing. Like, again, nothing you've ever seen is like that. You've never seen anything like that before. The scroll and the horns, you get chills for. It's these characters and creatures that are unfamiliar, where Empire is so good and so close, but you're familiar with the characters. So it's not. It's all new, but it's you kind of know, you have some idea what's happening. You know the characters a little bit, and it's funny how you touched on the commercialism too. There's that great. I think it's on Netflix. They talk about I forget that it's like an '80s series, but they talked about the merchandising for the early Star Wars and how General Mills got the action. Was it General Mills?
The action figure
Did the action figures.
It's Kenner.
Kenner? Is it Kenner?
Yeah, it was Kenner.
About how they shopped like the action figures and how they got all these goofy prototypes, and like Kenner, when they finally did it, it was like, yes, this is kind of close to what we're thinking about, and yet they're not great, but they're incredible at the same time.
Yeah. The thing that's crazy about Star Wars too is like everything George Lucas went through to make that movie. It's like, dude, I don't know how many nervous breakdowns. He was hospitalized from exhaustion. It's like that guy had a vision and he was not going to stop until it was made, and man, kudos to that.
They're shooting in Tunisia, like they're building sets and
in sandstorms, and it's
like new technology they never done before, and
all the models and all the the masks for the cantina for the Mos Eisley part. I mean, dude, there's nobody had that.
Watching
to make all that.
Watching the makings of her was just the best. Where you're like, it's such a massive scale production, but everyone thought it was going to fail.
Yeah, everyone thought it was going to suck. It's but he pulled it off, man. Pulled it off.
Yeah, and here we are today. 50 years later.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I think Josh said it best. It's like that changed popular culture. I mean, damn, how many movies can you say that? About
and then
that?
they're also spawning that, like, all those terrible spin-offs, like domestically trying to replicate the Star Wars phenomenon, and then all the overseas worse spin-offs that are incredible but terrible.
Yeah, I mean, nothing. What did we have prior to Star Wars? I mean, there was like Flash Gordon, there was Star Trek, there was, Planet of the Apes. But, when I was a kid, I used to watch Star Trek, but I never connected with it like I did Star Wars. There was something kind of cold, like kind of distant about it. And I like the original series, the Star Trek, and I love Planet of the Apes, but I don't connect with it like I did Star Wars.
You just hate Charlton Heston.
I don't like that damn dirty human. But yeah, Star Wars #1.
Yeah, we got there with minimal debate.
Yeah. Well, hey, so Teddy, tell us what's Spaghetty Town have coming out?
It's just Star Wars themed things.
The Darth Maul EP.
Awesome.
I don't even think, if I told any of the bands, he'd be like, "What? No, like absolutely not." So we are in August. So the Italian band Pee-wees have a record coming out in September. It's incredible. I've been listening to it for a year. It's still consistently, I'm like, this is such a good record. Like, I can't believe how good of a record they made. When we were emailing initially, I was like, look, if this doesn't pan out, we don't work together. I'm like, I will still buy this record because I love the Pee-wees One Ride album. It's so good. Just like great garage punk, rock record. I'm doing a 7-inch from the band Clean Lines from Seattle. It has members of the Briefs. If you're a fan of the Briefs, that sound, you're going to be stoked.
Oh.
As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like, one listen, I was like, done, killer. And then the Bambies from Canada, they have a record coming out also. So this
full
is
length?
Like another full length, and it's lining out the rest of my year. Like I'm like, all my money is tied up and all my time is tied up. But yeah, super excited. 3 really cool releases, and it's got a great way to end my year.
killer, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, 3 really good ones. Like I mean, they're all good, but like I'm really excited about these.
So where can people go to buy Spaghetty Town?
So you can
Record.
always go to spaghettytown.com, and I have a very bad website. But if you just click on store, it'll link you to my store, and that's spaghetti with a Y. So it's SPAGHETTY town.com. If you kind of Google it loosely, it pops up pretty quickly. Or just go to Audio Ammunition and search for me. No, I'm kidding. Well, I mean, I suppose you could search that, but we have a pretty good web presence. We go to our Instagram, go to our Facebook, and we begrudgingly had to make a TikTok against our will.
Oh,
I kind of talked to everyone about how do we reach young people and a new audience, and I don't know how to reach young people. I'm almost 50, and how do I? Yeah, so people do TikTok, so I guess I had to. My hand was forced.
Yeah, no, that's a good way, man.
yep.
Yeah, begrudgingly. I mean, I'm not doing TikTok dances on it, but
A little thread dance.
yeah, I've been trying to watch other people, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do parts from movies or duets or stitches. Like, I'm just gonna post some videos and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I almost thought about, back in a while ago, like just going on there and just doing quick reviews of records.
That's
or something like that.
A friend of mine does that, and they're not goofy or corny. They look cool, and he touches on records, and I'll just send it to you to check out. This dude, a real Lulu. He goes deep. Like his videos, he researches, and I don't know if he's reading from a script or he's just incredibly smooth, on camera.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's incredible. I watch him and I'm like, is he practicing before? Is he running lines? He's really good.
Huh. That's cool. Well, hey man, we've taken a lot of time and I know it's late, and thank you again, Teddy, for coming on.
Yeah, this was super fun. I mean, there's stuff you can talk about all the time, and Star Wars is kind of an easy no-brainer for so many people.
Yeah. But we love Spaghetty Town Records. We highly recommend checking out Teddy's site, Teddy's products.
Yeah, please.
I mean, man, even the old records, not just the ones you just talked about, but got a killer catalog, man.
And there's a lot of stuff I've been kind of looking through my stock, and I'm like, these are going to sell out soon, and I'm probably not repressing them. Just there's a need and space, money, and need, all these things.
Yeah.
I only can do so much.
You're all, damn, I do have a good ear.
I do flip through sometimes, and I'm like, these are really good records. These are so cool.
All right, man. Well, thank you again, and thanks everybody who listened. Hope we didn't tick anybody off. Thanks, Ed, for coming on, and of course, Josh. But yeah, let us know how you like our podcast. You can leave reviews or rate us or whatever, and drop us a line at borntolatepod@gmail, and whatever. Just say hi. Just tell us to go fuck off, whatever.
And all your Star Wars criticisms.
Yeah.
Right to Jay.
Please. Yeah. Just attention to.
Here's where you were wrong.
Yeah. So thanks again, everybody. And we'll see you next episode.